Okay, let's dive right in. Get this. Average testosterone levels in men, they've plummeted, like down by 40% in just the last 40 years.
Right.
That's that's a really huge drop.
It is. It's pretty staggering when you think about it. And yeah, sure, things like endocrine disruptors, chemicals in the environment, they play a role. But digging into all of that, that's a whole other deep dive.
Right.
Today, our mission really is to focus on solutions, practical things you can do. We're looking at these, well, pretty surprising discipline-based strategies that our sources show can potentially triple your testosterone.
Triple, you mean going from levels near, what, hypogonadism, like around 300?
Yeah, around 300 NGL up to over 1,000, and that's the key point.
And the amazing part, the really compelling thing from the research we looked at, is that this isn't about drugs or,
Yeah.
spending a fortune on supplements.
Exactly. No pharmaceuticals, no expensive pills.
This deep dive, it's basically your shortcut. We're pulling out the key insights from the sources, figuring out how all these factors connect so you can get properly informed, and we'll use these ideas yourself.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I first read through this stuff, it was pretty eye-opening.
It really is. That 40% drop, it's undeniable. But like we said, forget the why for a second. Let's focus on the how, the practical fix.
So what we're saying is you can make dramatic improvements without prescriptions, without emptying your wallet. It's about fundamental changes. Discipline, helping your body fix itself, basically. We're going to hit three main areas: food, what, and how you eat; exercise, how you move your body; and sleep, how you rest and recover.
Okay, let's start with food. Nutrition, it's absolutely critical. But, and this is important, there's no single magic testosterone diet. It's not like eating one specific food will fix everything.
Right.
It's more a mix of things, what you eat, yeah, but also how much and even when.
Okay, so first base, how much? Calories. The sources are super clear on this, aren't they? You eat too little, being in a caloric deficit, that's bad news for T levels.
Directly bad news. Yeah. Think about it. If your body isn't getting enough fuel, it goes into survival mode, building muscle, producing hormones like testosterone. Those are anabolic growth processes. Your body dials them back.
So it shuts down things like insulin, IGF-1, MTOR, these growth signals.
Precisely.
Yeah.
At a cellular level, it puts the brakes on. Less anabolism means, well, less muscle building, less T production. It's seen as non-essential when resources are scarce.
So for most people trying to optimize, what's the target? Maintenance calories.
Generally, yeah. Around maintenance is the sweet spot. Now, if you're actively trying to build muscle, maybe a slight surplus. But slight is key, like no more than maybe 300 calories over maintenance per day. That helps maximize T without packing on too much fat. And fat gain itself can be an issue, which we'll get to.
Okay, but there's a twist, right? What if you're overweight or, have high body fat, even if your weight isn't technically overweight, like over 25%, 30% fat?
Yes, that's the fascinating exception. For those individuals, actually restricting calories and losing fat increases testosterone. It seems counterintuitive at first.
How does that work?
It's because excess body fat, particularly visceral fat, contains an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase converts your precious testosterone into beta-estradiol, which is a type of estrogen.
So more fat means more conversion away from testosterone.
Exactly. So when you lose that fat, less conversion happens, your testicular function often improves, and your natural T levels actually go up. It's a huge lever to pull if you're in that situation.
Okay, makes sense. Let's talk macros then. Protein, carbs, fats. Starting with protein. There's a sweet spot here too, right? Not too little, not too much.
Definitely a Goldilocks zone. Too little, say under 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight. That can hurt T because you need protein for anabolism, but way too much, like over 2.5 grams per kilo. That can also be a problem. The body has to work hard to process all that excess nitrogen. It can actually become a stressor.
So the optimal range, according to the sources,
looks like somewhere between 1.6 and 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. That seems ideal for maximizing T production and holding onto muscle, even if you're cutting calories to lose fat.
Right. And the case study we looked at, the person was hitting around, 2.1 grams per kilo?
Yeah, consistently in that range. And another point, that post-workout protein, getting 20, 30 grams in that sort of anabolic window after lifting weights, still important for muscle repair and growth signals. Oh, and one quick caveat. Some animal studies hint that very low protein during development, like puberty, might impact later fertility or testicular function. We can't say for sure in humans, but it suggests being cautious with super low protein diets, especially for younger people.
Good point. But the main takeaway is, overall calories still matter more than nailing the exact protein number.
Absolutely. Calories are king here. You can eat the perfect amount of protein, but if you're chronically undereating, your T levels will likely suffer regardless.
Okay. Carbohydrates. Often demonized, but sounds like they're needed.
They are definitely not the enemy for testosterone. Carbs actually do two key things. One, they help stimulate those anabolic hormones we mentioned, insulin, IGF-1, and they also stimulate LH, luteinizing hormone, which is like the signal from your brain telling your testes to make testosterone.
So you need some carbs for the signaling and the anabolic environment.
Right. But there's a catch, especially with very low-carb diets, like keto. They can cause a big spike in cortisol, the stress hormone.
And cortisol is the enemy of testosterone.
Directly. It suppresses it. That initial cortisol spike on very low carb can be over 35%. Now, the body often adapts over weeks, but it's a significant hit initially.
So the strategy is not zero carb, but maybe smarter carbs.
Exactly. The sources lean towards getting carbs from slower digesting sources. Vegetables, for instance. In the case studies, something like 45% of total calories came from carbs, but likely prioritizing these slower types. You get the benefits without the crazy cortisol roller coaster.
Makes sense. Okay, last macro. Fats.
Yeah.
Essential, right? Because of cholesterol.
Absolutely essential. Cholesterol, which you get from dietary fats, is the literal building block, the precursor molecule for testosterone and other steroid hormones.
So low-fat diets are a definite no-no for T levels.
A definite no-no. The research showed they're particularly bad for testosterone in men of European ancestry, interestingly enough. Suggests some metabolic differences, maybe?
And quality matters too, like saturated versus unsaturated.
It does. Saturated fat can raise T a bit more directly in some studies, but for long-term health, especially heart health, you probably want to lean more towards polyunsaturated fats. Think omega-3s and monounsaturated fats, like from olive oil.
So aim for maybe 30% of calories from fat, but focus on the healthier kinds.
That seems to be the sweet spot, according to the sources. Good T levels without compromising cardiovascular health down the line. It's that balance again.
Okay, macros covered. What about micronutrients, vitamins, minerals? Do they matter much?
They matter, but only if you're deficient. That's the key takeaway. More is absolutely not better here. Taking extra zinc, if your zinc levels are already fine, won't boost your T.
So identify and fix deficiencies. Don't just pop pills hoping for magic.
Exactly. The big ones to watch are zinc deficiency causes a really rapid T drop and is linked to hypogonadism. Magnesium is interesting because it seems to increase free testosterone, the usable form. Vitamin D is another big one. Correcting a deficiency often raises T. And omega-3s are important too.
And the best way to know if you're deficient.
Track your diet using an app for a week or two. See if you're hitting the RDAs, or even better, get a blood test. Then supplement only if needed.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to pillar 2. Movement. Exercise. How does this fit in?
Right, exercise. It's a bit nuanced. Both cardio and strength training do give you a temporary boost in testosterone for a few hours afterwards.
Which is why they tell you not to exercise right before getting your blood tested for T levels, right? You want the baseline.
Exactly. You want your resting or basal level. That temporary spike isn't the long-term picture. The real game changer with exercise, particularly if you have excess body fat, is fat loss.
Back to the fat loss connection.
Yes. Exercise helps you lose fat. And as we said, less fat means less testosterone gets converted to estrogen. That's probably the most powerful way exercise boosts your basal long-term T levels if you're starting overweight.
And you see this effect in TRT studies too, right? People lose fat, especially in certain areas.
Yeah, it's quite striking. Testosterone therapy leads to significant fat loss, often particularly noticeable in the thighs, which is typically seen as a more feminine fat storage pattern. And muscle mass goes up. It just highlights T's direct role in body composition. Losing fat naturally helps your body reclaim that T.
Now, something that really stood out to me in the research was the link between aerobic capacity VO2 max and testosterone. That seemed huge.
It's a really strong correlation. Higher VO2 max tends to go hand in hand with higher testosterone levels. Think about aging. As VO2 max typically declines in middle age, say 50s, 60s, that often mirrors the drop in testosterone, muscle mass, strength.
And quality of life later on.
Absolutely. But the flip side is also true. Men who maintain higher T levels seem to preserve their VO2 max and strength better as they age.
You mentioned your own experience with this when you were digging into the research.
Mm-hmm.
Increasing your VO2 max quite dramatically.
Yeah, personally, I saw almost a 50% jump in my VO2 max, up to around 62 millineumann. And I really think that was a major piece of the puzzle for seeing those big T-level increases. That involved specific training protocols, like the Nordic protocol a couple times a week. That's a type of high-intensity interval training, plus regular zone 2 cardio, that steady your state stuff.
Wow. Okay, so aerobic fitness isn't just for heart health. It's deeply tied to hormonal health, too.
It really seems to be. Profoundly important for vitality long term. Now, strength training, lifting weights, it's great for that temporary T boost,
Yeah,
which helps muscle growth.
the anabolic stimulus.
Right. But it doesn't seem to reliably raise your basal T levels long term, the number you see on a blood test. So, crucial for muscle, maybe less so for your baseline T set point compared to fat loss or VO2 max improvement.
Okay. Pillar 3. Sleep. This seems pretty straightforward. Less sleep, lower T.
It's incredibly direct. Sleep quantity is just non-negotiable. Your body produces most of its testosterone while you sleep, primarily during deep sleep cycles. Levels naturally peak then and fall when you're awake.
And the impact of even short-term sleep deprivation is significant.
It's shocking, honestly. One stat from the sources. Just 1 week of sleeping only 5 hours a night can slash your T levels by 15%. 15%. That's like aging yourself 10 or 15 years in terms of testosterone, energy, muscle, libido.
Wow. But the good news is that's fixable.
Completely fixable.
Yeah.
Start sleeping enough again, and those levels rebound. It's not permanent damage from short-term restriction.
Okay, so quantity is key. What about quality? Does how well you sleep matter?
Definitely. Specifically, REM sleep, the dreaming stage. The research shows most testosterone is released in these sort of pulses during REM sleep.
So if your REM sleep is messed up, fragmented.
Your T production takes a hit. It needs that consistent quality REM time.
So how do we protect or improve REM sleep?
Yeah.
Any actionable tips from the sources?
Yeah, a few clear ones. First, avoid alcohol before bed. It might make you drowsy, but it actually suppresses and delays REM sleep onset, pushes back that T release window.
Okay, no nightcaps. What else?
Avoid THC, the active component in marijuana. It's known to reduce total REM sleep time. CBD is noted as potentially different, but THC is problematic for REM.
Right.
Also, steer clear of certain sleep meds, particularly benzodiazepines and the Z drugs like zolpidem. They can interfere with natural sleep architecture, including REM. Melatonin is mentioned as potentially okay if needed for falling asleep, but natural strategies are better.
And stress. Cortisol again.
Cortisol plays a role here, too. High stress, high cortisol can definitely fragment sleep, especially waking you up early in the morning, cutting off that final REM cycle. Though, like you mentioned with your own experience, even with some stress, big improvements are possible. It's a factor, maybe not a total deal breaker, if other things are dialed in.
But the number one thing for quality sleep, for REM,
Regularity, hands down. A consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up around the same time every day, even on weekends as much as possible, aligning with your natural body clock, your chronotype. Your body loves routine for hormone release.
And there was a mention of a simple biological sign.
Yeah, nocturnal erections. They happen mostly during REM sleep, so their regular presence is generally a good indicator that your REM sleep and the related hormonal processes are functioning pretty well, a natural check-in, so to speak.
Okay, interesting. Final area. Medications and supplements. Let's clear up some confusion. Hair loss meds, like finasteride. Do they tank your testosterone?
Good question. Comes up a lot. The science says they work by blocking the conversion of testosterone to DHT, dihydrotestosterone. But crucially, they don't lower your free or bioavailable testosterone, the active stuff that impacts energy, muscle, libido. They might affect total T slightly, but not the active fraction. So generally considered safe for T levels when used for hair loss.
Okay, that's clear. What about all those T booster supplements you see everywhere?
Yeah. The sources are pretty blunt here. Most of them are just marketing hype. They don't do what they claim.
Mostly useless.
Largely, yes. The only time supplements really help is, again, if you have a confirmed deficiency in something specific like vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, you find that out through tracking or testing. If you're not deficient, taking more won't help.
But what about things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, adaptogens?
Good point. Adaptogens can potentially help indirectly. They work by helping your body manage stress, potentially lowering cortisol, and since high cortisol suppresses testosterone, reducing cortisol might allow T levels to rise. I think you mentioned experimenting with rhodiola yourself.
Yeah, I did, as part of trying everything out. But based on the research, it likely wasn't the main reason for the big shifts. More of a supporting player, maybe.
Exactly. The core message from the sources is that these dramatic tripling-type results were achieved without relying on any specific T-boosting supplements. It was the fundamentals.
Which brings us to the big one. Hormone replacement therapy, TRT. Where does that fit?
The sources position it as the absolute last resort. Something to consider only after you've genuinely exhausted all the natural strategies.
Why this strong emphasis on natural first?
Several compelling reasons. One, the natural stuff is free or very low cost. Diet, exercise, sleep discipline, they don't cost money. Two, they have massive holistic benefits, improving your diet, fitness, sleep that improves everything, your overall quality of life, and they're demonstrably safe.
And the longevity angle. You mentioned VO2 max earlier.
Exactly. That's number 3, and it's huge. Improving aerobic capacity, your VO2 max, is one of the very few things we know of in humans that seems to directly slow down the aging process and significantly reduce mortality risk. It literally buys you more healthy years.
And TRT, the exogenous testosterone.
Yeah.
How does that compare for longevity?
Well, the current evidence isn't great, frankly. Some human studies suggest TRT might actually reduce life expectancy and survival. Animal studies also link higher testosterone levels from external sources to shorter lifespans. There are potential downsides, like maybe impacting telomere length, those caps on our chromosomes linked to aging, or overstimulating pathways like mTOR, which is involved in growth, but in excess might accelerate aging processes.
So it's kind of a trade-off, maybe short-term gains in muscle or confidence with TRT versus potential long-term health and longevity risks.
That seems to be the picture emerging. It's a complex decision, obviously, if natural methods fail, but the whole point of this deep dive, really, is showing the incredible power you have to make massive changes using these free, natural tools that work with your body's systems. That potential is what's so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up. The core message is dramatic improvements in testosterone, even potentially tripling it, are achievable naturally.
Totally. It comes down to discipline with the fundamentals. Dialing in your calories and macros, smart exercise, focusing on fat loss if needed, and definitely boosting that VO2 max and fiercely protecting your sleep, both quantity and quality, especially REM.
And these aren't just T-hacks. They improve everything: your health, how long you live, how well you live. So the final thought for everyone listening: given how powerful these free natural strategies are for your entire well-being, what's one small discipline change you could commit to starting today? What's one step you can take to invest in that healthier, more vital future self?